Hi guys, I'm going to go over the homework from yesterday, the 13 through 20. Okay, so again, I am hoping that you guys seeing them worked out is helping you as well. So for 13, you have cosine squared minus 1 over sine squared minus 1. Those are both Pythagorean identities. Those are the ones that I referred to as being backwards. So then you get negative sine squared up top, negative cosine squared on the bottom, and then that simplifies to a positive tan squared x. So there's number 13. Number 14, you've got cosine x times cosecant x times secant squared minus 1. Okay? So, secant squared minus 1 is a trig identity. If you look at your paper, that is going to be tan squared. And then remember, guys, this is where we're going to look to turn everything into sine and cosine and see what can cancel. Cosine over 1, 1 over sine, and then tangent squared is sine squared over cosine squared. Pay attention if it's squared or not. I make that mistake sometimes and just write sine over cosine. So pay attention to exponents. So right now we've got a cosine that can cancel out one of those. And then a sine can cancel out one of those. So all that's left is sine over cosine. And sine over cosine is tangent. That was number 14. 15. Again, these are also attached on paper, so you can look at my work on paper as well. Secant x. Oh, this one's a little tricky. Let's have the whole board. 15 had a little bit of extra chicken scratch to it. So we've got secant x, tan x over tan squared x plus 1. Okay? So again, you look at the bottom. The bottom is a trig identity. It is secant squared. Okay? The top, I'm going to switch to sines and cosines and see what we can do with that. So secant is going to be 1 over cosine. Tangent is going to be sine over cosine. Alright, so nothing cancels there, so I'm just going to leave it as that right now. But I want to get rid of this in the bottom. Okay? So secant squared in the bottom is the same as having 1 over cosine squared. So we still got all that junk. Okay? So we got that. Running out of room here. Let's scooch you over there. Okay? And then we need to multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm actually going to do this. All right, I'm going to bring it back over here. We'll do this. Sorry. Multiply by its reciprocal. Okay, yeah, we can see that. Now we're going to come back down here. The bottom is gone. Up top, I've got 1 over cosine, sine over cosine, cosine squared. Okay? Now look, we can cancel. I've got 2 cosines here and 1 there. So 15, all that mess turns into sine x. All right? Again, I haven't had too many questions. Please let me know if you have them. Hopefully you guys seeing them worked out. Hopefully you're watching the videos. Trying to be as helpful as I can. 16. Sine squared cotangent squared over 1 minus sine squared. There's our Pythagorean identity. We've got cosine squared on the bottom. The top is sine squared over 1. And then cotangent is going to be cosine squared over sine squared. Okay? So I'm going to look at my top. What can cancel? Yep. Sine squareds can cancel, so all you've got is cosine squared over cosine squared. And again, some of you are still writing 0. Do not write 0. That is 1. 17, cosine squared x minus 1 over cosine squared x tan squared x. Cosine squared x is a Pythagorean identity. It's written backwards. So that's the one that's negative. The bottom, I'm going to do my cosines and sines. So cosine squared over 1 times sine squared over cosine squared. Okay? So in the bottom, these are gone. Similar to the one we just did. We're left with this on the top and that on the bottom. So 17 should be negative 1. All right. 18. Hopefully you guys are hanging in there. Cosine x, secant x, cosine x. Again, I talked about this, and this may be the one we did before, but I distribute first, just so I don't have to mess with distributing with fractions. I'm going to distribute that. Cosine x, secant x. And then I'm going to, I think we had this. I'm going to distribute that. Cosine times secant is cosine times 1 over cosine. That's still there. It's not 0. It's a 1. And what's 1 minus cosine squared? Sine squared. So that is number 18. 19 and 20 were a little tricky, so hopefully I haven't lost you guys yet. 19, we've got another parentheses. Cotangent, tangent, cotangent. Oh yeah, okay. So lots of distributing. So that's cotangent tan. And that's cotangent squared. This, again, you don't have to turn to sines and cosines. Hopefully you just see that tangent's 1 over cotangent, and that's 1. So then you look at your Pythagorean identities. 1 plus cotangent squared is cosecant squared. So that was 19. All right. Last one. This one has a little bit of work to it. We've got tan x plus cotangent x over cotangent x. Okay, some of you are going to be tempted to cross off the cotangents. You cannot do that. This plus sign right here prevents you from canceling it off. So what we're going to do, guys, is make everything into sines and cosines first. So this is going to be sine over cosine plus cosine over sine all over cosine over sine. Okay? Now we want to smush together the top. Okay? And if you guys notice, you can't just add this because it doesn't have a common denominator. So if you think about it, we want to add it. What would our common denominator be? Hopefully somebody out there said cosine sine. So there's my first one. I'm going to do that there. And then my second one's going to have the same one. Again, this is on your answer key. Hopefully this will help you follow it too. So right now, I want to change this to the common denominator. I need to multiply it by sine. Whatever you do to the bottom, have to do to the top. So what's our new numerator there? Sine squared. So now I want to make this guy, match him. So I need to multiply him by a cosine to get to the common denominator. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. We will be working with fractions quite a bit in these trig identities. So make sure you're understanding this. Cosine times cosine is cosine squared. Okay? And then we still have cosine over sine on the bottom. Okay? Now we can add the top because it is a common denominator. Now, guys, I want you to think back. We haven't used this one in a minute, but what's sine squared plus cosine squared? It's your Pythagorean identity. Sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. And you have the common denominator. Cosine over sine, and then this is still in the bottom. Okay? Again, we don't want a fraction over fraction. We're going to multiply by its reciprocal. Sine over cosine would cancel that one out. Whatever you do to the bottom, you got to do to the top. If you look at that, what can you cancel? Yep, you can cancel the sines. So you've got 1 on top, cosine and cosine on the bottom. So there is your answer. Okay? So, again, hopefully this is helping. Please reach out. And our next video will be our notes for our next section, which I think will kind of be a little bit easier, and you guys will see why when I get to it. All right. See you later.